Good morning. My name's Jacqueline de Rojas. I'm delighted to be with you here today. I am a technology optimist, unashamedly. Just a little bit about me. I have a 40-year relationship with technology. That means I'm 62. I've worked in technology all my life as a troubleshooter for very large tech enterprise software companies like McAfee, for example, Citrix, Sage, CA Associates. So lots of very large businesses. And now I am a portfolio non-executive director, so I sit on the boards of a number of businesses, tech businesses like Rightmove, for example, a bit of property porn for you. And also I am the chair at Bletchley Park as well, recently appointed. So I have lots of good reasons to be here in Milton Keynes, and I'm delighted to have been invited to talk to you today. So what am I going to talk about? One of the things that I have held close my whole career in technology is diversity and inclusion. And also the skills agenda. I am the chair of the Institute of Coding as well. So having been in technology for 40 years, I am excited and enthused about what's possible, but I'm also very acutely aware of if we don't harness it for good, then things could go in the wrong direction. The one thing I'm really excited about recently is that the Nobel Prize Awards, I see lots of heads nodding. The Nobel Prize Award for chemistry went to UK-born and educated Demis Hassabis, a computer scientist, for work in AI, who has completely reshaped human potential and discovery. The Nobel Prize for physics went to Cambridge-educated Geoffrey Hinton, and that's for his foundational work in machine learning. Now, how cool is that? 2 Nobel Prizes for chemistry and physics going to computer scientists. Honestly, I just think, what does that tell us? That tells us that technology is prevalent, it's everywhere. FYI, it can't be uninvented. So we need to figure out how we're going to harness it for good and how we're going to leverage it. But I just wanted to start with that because we're standing on the brink of a new era of unprecedented advancements, especially with Gen AI. This is a moment which is different from all other types of technology, and I don't need to tell you that, but the question is, are we building a digital future that includes everyone? And are we creating a digital landscape that truly reflects the diversity of humanity? Or could we inadvertently be leaving people behind? And so I'm just going to ask you to imagine a world where only a few voices, a few backgrounds, and just a small amount of people and companies build technology. What kind of world would that create? And importantly, who would that leave out? And we've all seen examples of how technology has been created and left people out. And I'll give you one really quick example. A doctor arrived at the gym and couldn't gain access to the locker room. Lots of technologists changed out the swipe card, looked at what was going on, couldn't get her into the locker room. Why? Because the job title doctor had been hard-coded as a male job title. So this is the bias that we need to be careful that we don't amplify as technology learns from itself, as we instruct it to learn from itself. Another example, more than 60% of elderly drivers have stopped going into towns and villages. Why? Because they can't fathom the parking apps. There's no cash alternative. And the switch to app-only parking payments is becoming a barrier, for sure. And I was at London Tech Week last year, and I asked the team from Estonia, which is arguably the highest tech adopted country in Europe. And I said, what do you do about this marginalised group, about the elderly who potentially are being left behind? And their answer was shocking but simple. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I said, I don't know what that means. And they said, well, we simply don't charge the elderly for parking. So another kind of lifelong learning principle here, which is we don't have to tech the hell out of everything. We don't. But we do have to think about it from a human perspective. And I love that example because, it really just does remind us what it means to be inclusive. And I guess I question myself, if we'd had an elderly person on the design team for the parking apps, would that have happened? It's an interesting question. So, but first and foremost, diversity is, of course, a noble cause. Who amongst us in this room doesn't believe that inequality for everybody? Of course we do. But that's not the only reason that this matters. That's not the only reason that diversity is important. The second reason is that diverse teams simply make better decisions. And that's consistent. Research shows us that looking outwards, not inwards, helps us to solve problems faster and more creatively. Research shows us that companies with ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to outperform their peers financially. Gender diverse teams are 15% more likely to see above average returns. I think that's a little low. But when we talk about diversity, we're talking about the lifeblood of progress and stronger, more resilient businesses. We're talking about really important reasons why diverse teams matter. One of the big drivers for me taking the role as chair at Bletchley Park was because of the 10,000 people there. How many do you think were women? 8? Oh, 8,000. I think it was about 9,000. And the others, of course, were minority voices. That's because all the men have been sent to the front. I understand that. But what it tells you is that extraordinary things can happen. Competitive advantage can be achieved if we bring diverse and inclusive groups together. But for me, perhaps the most compelling reason why diversity matters is this idea that technology can learn from itself. And our increasing dependence on tech means that that bias is amplified. So it does matter that all of our voices are at the table when we are designing, developing, testing all of this tech. Otherwise, we will not build a world that works for everyone. And I believe that's why it matters that all of our voices are at the table. And AI is widely regarded as the most transformative technology of the 21st century, and it's only just getting started. Its potential to completely reshape industries like healthcare, to help solve the biggest issues we face, like climate. We have to think about how we harness it, use it, instruct it to behave responsibly. Because when we allow only a fraction of society to shape our digital tools, we will create a future that reflects a narrow, incomplete vision of humanity. And the stakes are very high because we are moving very, very fast. So I guess the question is, who is shaping our future? And Ian mentioned the 8 billionaires on the planet, and I guess one of them particularly is having a good go at that. But the tech giants, the companies like Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, they hold incredible power. They are architects of our digital ecosystems. Their influence, for sure, is immense, and they are pushing the limits of AI, cloud computing, and the boundaries of what's possible. But is that enough? Can we rely on the corporate giants? Can we rely on them to be fair and inclusive and equitable? Or are we seeing an imbalance in who is represented at the helm of this particular technological ship? The reality, though, is that it's hard to innovate in very, very large organizations. And innovation isn't coming just from big tech. It's coming from startups who are agile. It comes from smaller companies. 66% of all jobs in this country, by the way, come from small businesses. So all these agile thinkers, these visionary thinkers, they're all disrupting what's going on in industry. They're bringing fresh ideas and challenging the status quo. And that goes right from financial technology, fintech, to biotech, and to environmental sustainability. So it's often these smaller, arguably more diverse teams that drive the breakthroughs and the pace of change. But it's not only big tech, small tech, it's also academic institutions. So as John was talking about, and Esther was talking about, our universities are crucial as places of learning, places of teaching, but also think tanks that fuel theories and technologies that often become the backbone of tomorrow's world. And collaboration, research-driven approach, this has yielded and continues to yield enormous discoveries, witness Nobel Prize awards. And, in those environments as well, in this community, we have to make sure that diversity and inclusion is prioritized, along with a commitment to lifelong learning. I don't know about you, but when was the last time you actually, you may do this, but I haven't done this, when was the last time you actually looked at your pay slip online? It's quite hard to do. I used to love it when it came through the letterbox. But there was a stat that less than 50% of people now look at their pay slip. They actually look at their bank account more, because that's easier. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, how breaking into that, through that security and all of that, it's quite interesting. And I just wonder if we are doing enough to keep the digital divide at bay. We also need to look beyond business and academia. We also have to look at government and regulatory bodies too. They have a role to play, and that was what the AI Safety Summit was about at Bletchley Park, because they set the guardrails that protect the public in ensuring that innovation doesn't come at the expense of privacy and security and ethical integrity. We've got to agree what the value set is. And there also, diverse voices in policy making matters. So we're confident that those regulations must reflect our concerns, and do they protect all citizens equally? The 8 billion versus the 8. So the uncomfortable truth, perhaps, is that we must confront the tech industry in the sense that it is not diverse enough. There is an enormous underrepresentation of women, people of colour, marginalised groups in STEM, and that doesn't just mean lost opportunities for the individuals, it means lost opportunities for all of us. We still, Liz, you can keep me honest on this, I think we still only have 20% of women in tech. 6% of them are engineers, 10% in cyber. It's pretty low. It's pretty low. That's just one aspect of diversity. And we've got all these people who are neurodivergent, who are so brilliant at, they've got superpowers where they can recognize, number patterns that, mere mortals like us, normal humans, can't recognize. And we harness that? Hard to find. There's a lot of stigma attached. We need to figure out a way to be inclusive so that we can bring that into the industry and to create opportunities for them too. And this gap isn't just a matter of fairness. It affects the quality of the technology itself. Technologies built without diversity are technologies that lack robustness. They lack creativity and they lack empathy. So we need to build AI, machine learning, and other transformative tools with input from every corner of society so that they work for all of us. The stakes are high and the pace of change is staggering. I'm assuming everyone in this room has used Gen AI recently, right? Is there anybody in the room who hasn't? Give it a go. Give it a go. What's shocking, I mean, it's just so shocking how fast it can make sense of data from anywhere. We don't have to organise data anymore. It does it for you. To be fair, it does hallucinate a little bit sometimes, and we need to just test that. But that's why the humanity piece comes in. But it is advancing at breakneck speed, and we are moving into an era where AI isn't just a co-pilot. It's not just going to assist. It's going to anticipate your need. It's going to conduct research. It's going to be able to make complex decisions on your behalf, and it's probably going to execute if you give it permission to do so. This is a proactive, some people are talking about it as going from assistant to agent, and then there are others that are saying, and it's going further from agent to digital species. For us to figure out how we manage that, there is an opportunity, and there's an important part of how we guide and leverage that. And most importantly, the basis of that is that we have diverse teams building it and holding the guardrails and holding it to account. So there are ethical issues as well, fairness, transparency, even more critical than before. But there is now automatic explainability inside AI as well. And so arguably, we can train it to explain itself. So it isn't the black box technology it once was. And so that makes me feel a little bit better. Industries worldwide are racing to adapt. Every sector is scrambling to integrate AI, machine learning, automation into their operations. It's no longer about staying competitive. It's about survival. And another interesting stat, in the Fortune 500 from 1995, what do you think the percentages of the companies in the Fortune 500 that exist today that didn't exist in 95? Roughly. One. No. So 65% of the companies that were in the Fortune 500 in 95 no longer exist. So, you know, survival is a thing. Technology changes the face of how you're going to fare in the future. So, as I said in the beginning, you can't uninvent this. So what are you going to do with it? And across sectors, from manufacturing to retail, we're seeing collaborations that were once unimaginable. Car makers working with AI companies to develop autonomous vehicles. Clear. Fashion brands creating connected and smart clothing. And so this, you know, all of this that's happening around us, diversity matters, it's non-negotiable. Arguably, in the words of Dame Wendy Hall, if it's not diverse, it's not ethical. So that's an interesting thought as well. And what does it mean for society? It means that the job market will transform. The legal profession is already being massively transformed. Paralegals, where will they be? Someone asked me the other day, but how do we train our AI engineers? And I'm thinking, well, what engineers? I mean, this stuff builds itself. So roles will evolve. Some jobs will disappear, others that we can't even imagine will emerge. And privacy and security will probably continue to be a major concern for all of us. The digital divide will grow if we don't ensure that everyone has access to both skills and technology. And I'm not just talking about skills you need for work, I'm talking about skills that you need for life. And so we must remember that car parking example. So we do need the skills, but we also need to get policy right as well. Amidst all of these challenges lie incredible opportunities. Technology does have the power to solve some of our largest and most urgent issues. And I referred to climate change earlier, and I do believe that that has a central role to play. The potential, I believe, is extraordinary, but only if we build it with everyone in mind. And in the end, our digital future is a collective responsibility. It isn't the exclusive domain of Silicon Valley, of the 8 billionaires, of corporate boardrooms or tech startups. This is a shared journey, one that requires input from all sectors and all backgrounds, whether you're a policymaker, an educator, an ethicist, a business builder, a concerned citizen. Your voice matters when it comes to shaping the future of technology. And the future is not something that happens to us. It's something we create. So I ask each of you, what will you do to shape your digital destiny? What steps will you take to ensure that technologies of tomorrow reflect the diversity of our world today? Maybe it's something as simple as committing to lifelong learning. Maybe it's that. Above all, let's move forward with a sense of responsibility and possibility. We have the power to create a future that is not only innovative, but inclusive and ethical, and that leaves nobody behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That was really interesting, and a lot of that was at the heart of for me, for the digital divide and inclusion. Actually, sorry. Can you hear? Yeah, perfect. I wanted to start with actually your role at Bletchley Park and what you hope to bring to that role, because it's obviously really close to our hearts in Milton Keynes.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but when something walks through the door and is an invitation to apply for a role for something like Bletchley Park, I just got hairs on the back of my neck, because what I love about Bletchley Park is the extraordinary ability to operate under pressure, to create competitive advantage in defence of the nation, with a group of really committed, passionate and diverse thinking people who were just desperate to find a way to create and innovate. And they did. And for me, that legacy is not just important as we finish what I think is probably the post-war era, but as we walk into what could be a pre-war era. And I'm super interested in what we can learn, take from then, and prepare for what comes next. So that's where I'm thinking, and I'm excited about.
Yeah. And I think in some ways it leads on to another part which we were talking about, you were mentioning about sort of the gender equality and bringing more women into tech. And it's interesting, at its heyday there were 9,000 women working at Bletchley Park, and we've seen around the world during that war period that women stepped up and we had real tech roles, and it's just deteriorated over years and we've not managed to sustain that. And it's how do we kind of look to bring different diversities in. And I think for me I'm somebody who doesn't have A-levels. I was the only girl who did technology GCSE at school, and I'm also dyslexic. So for me it's really important bringing those different voices into the room. And how, when we talk about inclusion, it's also the inclusion and the different types of members of society who actually are working on these problems, who might not be academics, who may not have the qualifications, who do not have the backgrounds that we traditionally associate with some of these tech jobs.
Yeah, well, the good news is that tech doesn't require a qualification. Actually, it's one of the things that respects very little boundary in anything, be that geographical or... And I would say technology is super accessible. 50% of gamers are women, in case you didn't know that. That's what we do in our spare time. And what I love about technology is it is available to everybody, We just have to make sure it's created. So I think it's consumed by everybody. The question is it created by enough diverse voices? And when I say diverse voices, of course women, but it's all minority voices, including the men. So, I think inclusion is almost a better word than diversity, actually, because it needs all of us to make an effort. And maybe that's, what can we do about that? I don't know. I've been at it for 20, 30 years, and I don't know whether we're really moving the needle, other than, the startups, the small businesses. There are a lot of female CEOs who, are doing their thing in that way, and I would say that's probably one of the biggest impacts in this country that's happened, is that opportunity has been afforded to all in a more accessible way in the tech industry for women who can build and be female founders.
And I think actually that hearing from startups is really important. Quite often when we come to conferences and we see on programs and everything, it's quite often people who are in big corporations.
Yes.
And making that accessible for all people, sort of, actually you can do the startup. And I know there's a sort of digital eagles, all the support around sort of giving people access to those digital skills, those different ways of thinking has become really important now, of different models, and particularly of those who have care and responsibility, whether that's children or parents now, and this equally goes for men and women, of the ability to work from home and create businesses. And I guess those skills and that lifelong learning we need to be thinking about to enable that more effectively.
For sure, although it's pretty hard to work and be at home all at the same time. Just saying that, those jobs don't disappear either. And I think we've got to remember that, whilst we are juggling lots of things all the time, it's difficult. The burden on women, or let's say the burden on those who are carers, and that's not necessarily women actually, but those who are carers, that's super high. And so running your own business at the same time, it's tricky, but remote working and the ability to work from wherever you are matters. I mean, someone asked me the other day, where do you base yourself? Where's your office? And my answer to that is in my handbag. And because, work is not a place anymore necessarily for, the service industry. It's where you are. And I think we are often on the go all the time. And that does help. I mean, certainly when I started work, the mobile phone hadn't been invented. And I guess I'm not alone in this room in that. And you had to go to work to be at work in the service industry. And that's not necessarily the case. So yes, it does help, for sure.
And I think that mobile technology is really important. I've been remote working for sort of 10 years, but working out of airports, trying to find the Wi-Fi connection, and even quite often at the OU, I literally have to resort to working on my phone because it's the quickest way to get access to information and to do things quickly. And I guess there's that around that. My kids, I'm of an age, my children take the phone off and they now do the setting up, not because I'm not capable, but because I've got other better things to do. And I'm amazed at what they kind of set up for me. It makes my life a lot easier. And I think that's the other side of when we think about potentially the benefits of generative AI, of those tools that is going to make us easier just for the day-to-day working, the day-to-day living.
Just life. And I was reminded when you said you hadn't tried Gen AI. Funny example. My husband was running a 200-kilometre race. He's an ultra runner, a bit weird. And I was under pressure. I was running from meeting to meeting. And I thought, oh, God, I haven't written him a card. And I thought, right, I'm going to put into Gen AI, to ChatGPT. Right, my husband's running a 200k race. It's in the Dolomites. I want to say, I love you. I want to be encouraging. So all these prompts went into, and then out came this amazing thing that I could write in the card. The prose was brilliant. And I wrote it in the card, word for word. Okay, I might have changed a few things and a kiss at the end. And he phoned me from the plane. And he had tears in his eyes, and he said... Now, the question I'm going to ask you is, did I tell him? Just between us. I didn't tell him. But it's really super interesting how, I literally had 30 seconds to get this done, hide it in his bag, run off to my meeting, and then, that was it. And it's funny how, I think if you try it, there are ways in which it can really make the most extraordinary of differences. And I'm questioning myself on the ethics of that now. Was that a terrible... So, yeah, is that a terrible thing to do?
No.
No.
Because we used to pay poets to do the same thing.
Oh, well, there you go. See, now I feel really good. So my subscription is my poet on tap.
So,
perfect.
But I think those use cases of those things that make your life easier, I'm finding particularly... there are people in the audience who will attest that I overwrite.
You overwrite?
I overwrite.
Right,
it's something
okay.
I'm renowned for, that I put everything on paper because my brain is all over the show most of the time. What I'm finding actually now with using Copilot is I can throw something I've written into it and it will summarise it for me.
Yes.
So that I can give it to somebody to say, well, this is what I was thinking and it sort of makes sense now. And I think those benefits are really important, particularly if you are somebody like me who's neurodiverse or our patterns, we're working on lots of things of consolidating that brain for us into a really kind of manageable thing to start the conversation with somebody else is important.
Yes.
And also, I don't recommend it because you can go down a rabbit warren with this and the unconscious bias. I have conversations with Copilot quite a lot where I'm trying to solve a problem. I'm quite polite to Copilot most of the times, but I do occasionally go, well, that was really unhelpful. Brilliant the response you get back if you tell Copilot it's been unhelpful. You can also break Copilot. I frequently do it. It keeps telling me you've been on this topic for too long. But I'm finding really interesting things I can do with it that is just helping me on a day-to-day working pattern. And I think that's part of the thinking about inclusion. There's probably a lot of people in this room who are really highly engaged, but we have members of staff, they probably haven't really tried Copilot. They're scared to try it, and it's that, how do we build that confidence for people to actually have a go?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would have a go on the little things, just the things that make a difference in life. Maybe the next time you're writing a birthday card or something, have a go. But it is, I found it more helpful than not. I mean, it is interesting. It forces me to think about the quality of the question that I'm asking. And that can't be a bad thing for humanity, to be more precise, more targeted. And you know when you've asked a rubbish question because you get a rubbish answer. And that is super interesting, I think, because I've always believed that curiosity-led leadership matters because it creates space for other people to be amazing. And for me, Gen AI has encouraged me to be a better questioner and much more. And I love that. I think that's improving my skill set as well. We call it prompt engineering, but actually it's just better questions. Yeah.
I'm conscious of time because one of the things I'd love to talk about is the older generation. And I think this relative...
You mean? Or
no, well, actually, my mum, who literally, I don't know what's going on with my mum, but she literally clicks on every single phishing email at the moment. But actually, as a workforce, we're getting older. And I'm hearing a lot of, with the older generation, we don't understand this. And I'm sitting thinking, we built a lot of this. And I think it's the role that we, as the older generation, who'll be the next phase of where we are in our lives, but also for many of our senior leaders of, I feel I have a responsibility to those I work with who are now coming into management leadership roles to kind of pass the baton over to them. And I guess as our moving into our later years and how we can ensure that we continue to keep up our knowledge, but also support the others. And there's some really big decisions we have to make as organisations and humans.
Yeah, I mean, staying engaged. I don't know if we're going to be able to have to keep pace because I think we will have little co-pilot or assistants that will help us more than before. I mean, we already can shout at Alexa to put Radio 4 on. We can do lots of different things. So, when my mother, she's sadly passed away now, but she had dementia, and she had 2 questions that she would ask all the time. Where's my handbag? And where's my handbag? And what time is it? And the good thing about Alexa is it would always answer her and it wouldn't get cross. And so there are things that you can use as you get older, but I do think don't leave it too late because we were talking about this the other day that unfortunately, if you lose your glasses, all of this tech is a bit obsolete because you can't see anything. So voice, though, is going to be super important. And I certainly am leaning more on voice as I become more mobile, driving and what have you. So that's become my friend, and, you know, bit of Alexa from time to time.
I would agree with you, because having to just move to wearing glasses, I find it really difficult. Because I've never worn glasses.
And
I
now
can
the world,
constantly
you can see
yes,
everything.
I only read in, but so that's the thing, I can only use it for reading, so I find it really difficult going into like shops and I can't read anything. So that voice thing, I find myself talking to my phone more than I did in the past.
Well, the good news is it's going to talk to you, so it's going to be proactive and help you through life. So that's Gen A on our future. We just need to make sure it's built by diverse people.
Lovely. Is there anything else, final thoughts you want to share before we wrap up? Or?
Well, just the whole philosophy around who is building our digital future matters. It matters deeply, and I would encourage everybody who, whenever you're thinking about what meetings you're in, what teams you're in, and just consider whether, you know, everybody's voice is represented in the room. And it's a great question to ask sometimes, you know, where are the others? Especially, and it's not necessarily that you look physically different, but sometimes you're just all thinking the same way, and there's no, you know, I don't think it's a great meeting if there's no challenge. I mean, I don't mean being aggressive or passive aggressive, but I mean active debate and challenge. That is also very diverse and creates better outcomes. So I think we don't need to be stuck on necessarily the gender or the ethnicity, but also the groupthink is something that blights, you know, some meetings and boardrooms.
And I think that's probably a skill we really need to relearn with everybody going to lockdown, hybrid work, that ability to have a really valid, active conversation where voices are heard and be able to have different views.
Yes.
I think it's an art we are losing.
Yes, agree.
And is becoming more important to get those different views. So,
agree. Thank you.
Lovely. No, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.